Is Canon done? Are they abandoning their entry-level APS-C camera line? Well, we've got some bold and some would say shocking statements from Canon's chairman, Matari, saying that their focus is going to be on high value-add products. Details coming up, but first, I encourage you to subscribe and choose all notifications so you can stay up to date on all the latest camera gear, news, and rumors. Canon chairman Matari was interviewed by Toyo Kenzie Online, and he made some shocking statements about the future of the camera market and of Canon's strategy on delivering high value-add products to stay in business, stating that for more than 10 years, Canon has changed its business content, moving away from industries that require people to go overseas in search of cheap labor, and moving to industries that add as much value as possible. High value-added industries are also resilient to exchange rate fluctuations. Matari went further, stating, if it is a high value-added industry, it's possible to make a sufficient living even if it's produced here in Japan, where wages are high. The company has never produced high-end SLR cameras overseas. There's an awful lot to unpack here, but before I get into my analysis, I think it's very important to take a look at one phrase, high value add-in. What does it mean? Common definitions include adding value to a product or service helps companies attract more customers, which can boost revenues and profits. That value added is effectively the difference between a product's price to consumers and the cost of producing it. But that's not what Matari's getting at. He's referring to value add as describing that something special, that improvement, often intended to generate increased revenue and customer retention. Value add is also sometimes referred to as bang for the buck, that addresses special features or improvements added to a product or service to increase its monetary value and desirability of its customers. You see, Matari isn't just talking about raising prices, increasing their profit margins, increasing the amount of earnings before interest, deductions, and taxes. It's about increasing value add. And what value add, another word for value add, is delivering more capabilities, more outcomes that we as consumers are looking forward to. If we look back at cameras produced over the last 5 to 7 years from Canon, quite often the term that came up is, well, Canon's cripple hammer, that they're giving us cropped video, cropped 4K video, or they're giving us contrast detect in 4K mode. The modes were somehow crippled. They're removing all eye, they're removing other capabilities, making them less desirable. And this new focus by Canon is about delivering increased capabilities so that us as consumers look at these cameras and see them as providing more value to us. Just look at the Canon EOS R5. It's a $3,900 camera. It's several $100s more than its predecessor, the Canon 5D Mark IV. Is it overpriced? Well, that depends on what you're affording or what budget you have available to the camera. But for many of us in business, when we look at the outcomes, because that's how I look at this, I look at it as a tool to allow me to get my business done. What sort of enhancements, what sort of capabilities does it give me? Does it give me that detail that I'm looking for? Does it give me that resolution? Does it give me that dependability and reliability that even after shooting 900 videos for this channel, I can expect it to go another 2, 3, 4, or even 5 years? So while it costs $3,900, breaking that out over 5 to 7 years drops the cost of the camera down to something like $700 or $800. But giving me that detail that I was looking for, that 4K at 120 frames per second, that 8K oversample 4K, plus outside of all those video specifications with Canon Log 3 providing me with much more low light performance or dynamic range, well, I also get a fully functional professional level grade stills camera with 45 megapixels at 20 frames per second electronic. And that to me provides an awful lot of value, to the point where this camera is about 3 times the initial budget I had for my replacement of the Canon 70D. But when I looked at the capabilities that it provides me with and the cost and the value that I perceived, I saw that, wow, it's pretty good. We don't have video features that are severely crippled. We don't have cropped 4K with a 1.6 times crop anymore. And the overheating is gone. That was something that was provided in a firmware update. And if we focus on this idea of Canon provide us with more high value added products and services, we'll just take a look at the firmware updates for the Canon EOS R5. What, some 10 firmware updates so far, with firmware 1.6 so far out to date? And what have we seen in those firmware updates? Ask yourself, the firmware updates, what have they provided you with? Have they provided you with additional capabilities and outcomes? I mean, firmware 1.6, if you were a video shooter, well, you can now shoot unlimited 8K oversample 4K, 8K raw video, whereas you couldn't do that before. Yes, we still have that 30-minute record limit, and that's one area where they can provide additional value in this camera, is removing that 30-minute record limit. But attach a Ninja 5 external recorder, and the camera that I have today provides significantly more value than it did 2.5 years ago, and it didn't cost me a cent. And look at the Canon EOS R10, a camera that sells for $979. It doesn't provide cropped 4K anymore either, but instead provides 6K oversampled 4K. That's a huge improvement over previous Canon cameras that sold for $979. And so when we're talking about Canon providing high value add products and services, it doesn't mean that they're completely eliminating the lower end. It just means those point and shoot cameras, those really entry level cameras around $200, $300, those are most likely going to die away. You see, by providing higher value to the customer, where the customer perceives it as higher value, not to the company padding the margins, but if we as consumers see much higher value in our cameras that we're looking at purchasing, if we see that increased price, but we see an awful lot of value, more enhanced capabilities, well, then that's important because that creates brand awareness, but it also creates brand loyalty. And so it gives the best of both worlds. We're getting better cameras that can last for longer, that continue after they've been released, providing us with firmware updates to further increase that value proposition without costing us a cent. Matari went further, stating that the depreciation of the yen is an advantage for exports from Japan. However, the cost of importing from overseas is high. A weaker yen has more positive aspects, but it's not 100% perfect. And we can see this in the Canon EOS R6 Mark II. When I put out a video talking about the price, I said it's a good news and a bad news situation. The price hasn't gone up if you're purchasing the camera, the Canon EOS R6 Mark II in the United States. However, in Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, and Europe, the price has gone up. And why is that? Well, the exchange rate. So while the US dollar has been really, really strong, that's benefited the United States, meaning that Canon hasn't had to raise its price on the camera. But due to the exchange rate fluctuation around the world, we've all seen the prices go up. And when it comes to making cameras, regardless of whether the exchange rate is going up or down, it has positives and negatives. Canon has been working on their strategic plan for years and is currently in their 6th phase. And that phase is about accelerating business transformation by improving productivity and creating new businesses. And we can see the alignments in the words of the chairman. With the IT revolution and the advent of smartphones, cheap cameras were wiped out. Sales of Canon cameras have fallen by 1/3. And based on these experiences, we've aimed to transform our business structure. It's changed industries that used to make cheap cameras and cheap printers. And that transformation is already underway. I think it truly started with the Canon EOS R5, a camera that was designed many years ago. And we didn't really see these benefits of Canon's transformation, their realization of this market change, until the R5 came out. And that probably started in their previous phase. So the Canon EOS R5 came out and it did things that really shocked a lot of people. First of all, the idea that it had leapfrogged the competition. It had IBIS, 4K up to 120 frames per second, 8K RAW with autofocus, auto exposure. No, there's no way that Canon's done that. And it's 45 megapixels offering 8K DCI video, 20 frames per second electronic, 12 frames per second mechanical. It just didn't seem to make sense. Where was the cripple hammer going to strike? And yes, we did have that overheating, but with firmware 1.6, that overheating is all but gone other than 4K 120, and again, only after about 21 minutes. While the cripple hammer does still exist in some cameras, like we still don't see all eye in the Canon EOS R6 Mark II, again, looking at that Canon EOS R6 Mark II, look at the improvements in the video capabilities. We no longer have that 30-minute record limit. We can record for up to 6 hours, and in the basic frame rates, there's no overheating. We've seen a lot of improvements with the R6 Mark II. We've seen it in the R3, and we saw it with a Canon EOS R10, a camera that costs $979. No crop 4K video. Dual pixel autofocus 2 still works in that 4K up to 60 frames per second, and up to 60 frames per second, we get 6K oversampled 4K. And not only that, in terms of high-speed continuous stills, sure, the buffer isn't the fastest, but we can still whip off 23 frames per second. And that's a huge improvement over the 90D and other cameras where apparently the cripple hammer ran rampant. So what is the chairman of Canon trying to get at here? What can we distill down into 3 basic points? The first one, and the most obvious, is Canon's not going to be in the market of producing really cheap cameras around the $200 to $300 point. Doesn't make any sense. They can't produce them economically, and they can't provide proper support to customers, and it's only going to frustrate customers, and that's not good for Canon or their customers. And the second point, it's all about providing high value-added products and services. So what does this mean? Well, does it mean no more entry-level full-frame mirrorless cameras or APS-C cameras? No, it doesn't. But what it means is any camera or lens that Canon comes out with must be perceived by the customer as offering value. And if that means they can offer some 30 to 40% margin like Apple does, well, great, but they can't be perceived as offering cameras that have a cripple hammer at every corner. Every new camera like the R10, the R7, the R5, or even the R6 Mark II must be perceived by its customers at large as providing value, as providing enhancements to their capabilities. And even the firmware updates that Canon's providing, they're not just providing it out of the goodness of their heart, they're providing it to further that value add that even after you bought the camera for many years, you still feel that sense of loyalty by Canon to their customers. Still, 2.5 years after producing, after initially selling and releasing the Canon EOS R5, they're still hard at work releasing significant firmware updates like firmware 1.6. And the third point we can distill from the interview is that, well, this business transformation is ongoing, and it started many years ago, back in phase 1, which happened around, well, right at when the camera market was at its peak, where it had seen the most sales ever, and then rapidly started declining. And Canon has said this, even if the market drops to 5 million units, they'll have no problem surviving. They have a business plan. They're in the middle of a business transformation. And we would see more evidence of this if, well, the global situation wasn't where it is today. Since the R5 and the R6 came out back in 2020, we've seen a trickle of new lenses and new cameras. We would have seen a whole lot more in this business transformation. The fruits of their business transformation would have been a bit more evident. I'm really hoping that we'll see more of this in 2023 coming up in just about a month and a half. I really hope we don't have to wait until 2024 before finally Canon catches up to what's going on in the world and is able to release products as expected. And if you want to stay up to date on the latest camera news and rumors or the latest trends in the industry, then go ahead and subscribe and choose all notifications. By choosing all notifications, as soon as I publish a video like this one here, you'll get notified by YouTube, so that way you can stay up to date on all the latest camera news and rumors. That saves you from scrubbing all the Twitter feeds, RSS feeds, YouTube channels, websites, print, magazines, and whatnot. Basically, I cover all the major news for all the major brands and models, all the major camera market trends, all right in one spot. So please go ahead and subscribe and choose all notifications. It's getting late here. It's what, almost, yes, 11 o'clock, and I'm starting to have problems getting my words out. So this is a good time to stop as any. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're in the United States, have yourself a happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you again soon.